Morning all. British Science Week starts this Friday. This is a 10-day celebration of all things to do with science, technology, engineering and maths. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why do these subjects, and science in particular, enjoy or get this 10-day long celebration in the UK? And I think if you just sort of consider how our ancestors lived, really I think you can see the benefits of science. We enjoy a much more comfortable life than they did, and we have far more opportunities as a result of science. Now, what is science? Well, science is the discovery of what's actually in the universe, what was in the universe, and how these things that are in the universe actually work. Using this knowledge, we can then try to make predictions about how things will work and what will happen, okay, if we do certain things in the future. Now it's this knowledge and this ability to use this knowledge to shape the world around us that makes me optimistic about resolving all sorts of problems that humans actually face, such as global warming. And it's over the next century, I think, that science is really going to be the thing that resolves important issues such as that. Now, what I've asked these science teachers to do is to look back over the last year and pick some of the sort of science stories that they've really enjoyed, or the science stories that have actually caught their imagination. So let's see what they've got to say. So I'm joined by Miss Richards, who's the head of chemistry at the school, a chemistry teacher, and I can't help noticing that you've made a very interesting choice, actually, Miss Richards.
I have. I'm a little bit disloyal to chemistry in this instance, because I think probably the topic I've chosen as being the big excitement from last year is a biology one. But I think it really demonstrates very effectively what a massive impact science can have on the quality of human life. And I think that's a really, really important thing. So the thing I've been looking at is something linked to malaria. Now, malaria is a potentially fatal disease, so that means it can kill people. And every year, about 240 million people will get malaria. And the way they get malaria is that the mosquito bites somebody who has malaria, flies off to somebody who doesn't have malaria, not knowing this, of course, bites them and infects them with the malaria. So without the mosquitoes, malaria wouldn't spread, but with them, it does. So malaria at the moment kills about 600,000 people per year. Those numbers are much, much lower than they were in the past. And the reason that they're so much lower is that quite a few countries, particularly richer countries, have managed to use insecticides to basically get rid of the type of mosquito that spreads malaria. We would like, obviously, to completely eradicate malaria, but so far that's not been possible. In Africa in particular, a large number of people, mainly young children, still die from malaria. And in fact, about 80% of all malaria deaths occur in children under 5, so very, very young children.
Sorry, right, so you said 80%.
Yeah.
80% of what number again?
80% of the 600 and so thousand people per year.
So 80% is about how many?
So you're going to be talking over 500,000 deaths. Okay, over 500,000 children under 5 are dying because of malaria, mainly in Africa.
And this has still been happening until a couple of years ago.
It's still happening. Yeah, it happened last year. Okay, it happened the year before. So yeah, this is a very, very sort of current issue. If we could get a vaccine, then there's two benefits to a vaccine. One, obviously, if we vaccinate people, they're not going to get malaria, so they individually aren't at risk of dying from it if they haven't caught it. But even bigger than that, really, is if we can actually get a vaccine that's effective, eventually we might be able to eradicate, that's completely get rid of malaria altogether. So far, there's one big disease that's been eradicated worldwide, and that's smallpox. And that was a massive human killer. And the way that smallpox was eradicated was by a really effective vaccination program. And so if we could do something like that with malaria, well, that would be amazing.
So am I right in thinking this is going to get rid of the protist, the actual pathogen that causes the disease, but it's still going to leave the mosquitoes?
Absolutely. And whether we love mosquitoes or not, they're an important part of the ecosystem. So actually, it's far better than using insecticides, which just kill off the mosquitoes and therefore disrupt ecosystems. And so the really exciting news last year was on 23rd of April 2021, scientists at Oxford University actually announced that they had created a vaccine that was something over 75% effective. Now, World Health Organization, which is to some extent in charge of vaccines and which vaccines get used, they sort of basically say, if it's less than 75% effective, it's not really worth pursuing. But this is the first vaccine ever to have been created against malaria that is over 75% effective. And so if we can actually take that, use it, vaccinate people, not only are we saving the individual lives, but hopefully longer term, we might actually eradicate malaria worldwide. And I think that would be amazing.
I've got to say, I think it's going to be difficult to pick something from last year that has a quicker, bigger impact on people's lives. Yeah. So, right, thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
So the science story from the last year that I want to talk about involves this little fella, Alicia marginata, which is a sea slug that lives off the coast of Hawaii and the Tahitian Islands. And it lives in about 10 meters depth of water, and it glides along the rocks at the bottom of the sea and feeds on algae which grow on the actual rocks. And what it can do, which is amazing, is it can take the chloroplasts from that algae and actually keep those chloroplasts functioning within its own body, and it stores those chloroplasts all over the body, and they then supply the actual sea slug with nutrients, including glucose, which, you know, straight from the sun. So it doesn't have to just feed on other things, it can rely on the chloroplasts to also supply it with sugars. Now this is an example of kleptoplasty, which in itself is amazing. It's not the only sea slug that can actually do this. Other sea slugs can do it as well. And other sea slugs, for instance, can take on, we knew this already, can take on certain minerals and certain chemicals from the things upon which they feed. And you can see the one on the left, what it can do is take on poisons from certain corals that are poisonous, store them, and the bright colours tell you that it's feeling very confident. It knows it's very poisonous, and it knows it's protected because it takes on these other chemicals. Now, all of this in itself does excite me, but what really excites me is the next photo that I actually saw this year of Alicia marginata, which was released on March the 8th, 2021. And as you can see on the right-hand side, the head of the sea slug is completely detached from its own body. Now that in itself looks remarkable, and you might think, okay, what's happened here? As some horrible scientists actually cut the head off the sea slug, but that's not what's actually happened at all. Right, if we can show you the next film, okay, and you can just see for yourself what this amazing sea slug is capable of actually doing. So this sea slug can decapitate itself if it starts to suffer from parasites. How is it able to survive with just a head? Well, it's got the chloroplasts from the algae inside its head. Those chloroplasts can carry out photosynthesis, produce sugars, and those sugars keep the head cells fueled and alive. Those head cells then can produce the whole new body. Now, like many other things in science, this was actually discovered by accident. A research scientist working in a laboratory in Japan with a chance observation, was working with these sea slugs, looking at something else, and just happened to notice that one of them appeared to be decapitating itself. Now you might be thinking, what can we possibly do with this bit of knowledge, and how can a piece of knowledge like this possibly be useful? Well, unfortunately, we've got the same problem that many other countries have. We have lots of people waiting on organ transplant lists. These people who perhaps have got kidneys that are failing, perhaps their heart is failing, and they're waiting for a donor organ. Unfortunately, there's a shortage because you have to very carefully match an organ to the person who's going to receive the organ, because otherwise their body will reject the organ because they'll recognize it as foreign. If we can actually understand how Alicia marginata is able to use its DNA to construct new body parts, then that knowledge may enable us to in the future be able to construct new body parts for people using their cells and the DNA from their cells to instruct the building of those new body parts so that those new body parts are not rejected. Which would mean if somebody's lost a limb, for instance, in an accident, will we eventually be able to synthesize and make a new limb for that person with cells that got the same DNA and won't be rejected, so we can give that to the person? If we can, that would be amazing.